Hello, and welcome to another edition of Who's the Savage Now? Who's the Savage Now? Good question. I'm MC, your host, for this latest edition of my YouTube channel, Who's the Savage Now? Covering everything from handcrafted animal rights advocacy to local pedestrian safety, and everything in between. Vegan cuisine, music, handcrafted music. We got it right here. We got it. To, what else do we do? On air. We cover on-air malfeasance at our local public radio stations. Yes, we do. And we bring it all live and direct from the poor man's beachfront condo here on the edge of a continent, right on the edge, in an previously undisclosed seaside city, not far from the megapolis known as Los Angeles, California. Exhibit A for humanity gone wrong, indeed. So sit back, relax, walk the dog, feed the cat, and get ready for some hard-hitting commentary from yours truly, MZ. Thanks for being a part of the show. We appreciate it. Stay tuned for more. Greetings, everybody. MZ back with you on a very wet day here in Los Angeles. Very, very wet day here in LA. On this Wednesday morning, early March 2019. Couldn't believe what I saw yesterday on Jimmy Dore show. The Jimmy Dore show. The shady, super shady character, Greg Palast, who I've reported on here on my show, Who's the Savage Now, when he came in to support and defend and promote Jerry Quickly, a documented race-baiting, fact-efficient, violence-inciting former host at KPFK. They finally fired his ass. And Greg Palast came in to support and defend the only person at the station affiliated with the station. And Greg is affiliated with the station. He's not an employee there, but he's affiliated with the station. He shows up at special events and speaks there. He guest co-hosts frequently during fund drives. He comes on to give reports about his Venezuelan story that he's been peddling for the last 16 months, 17 months. So when I saw Greg Palast on Jimmy Dore, and the headline, the first fucking letters of the headline, what are they? BBC, BBC, BBC. Oh, and we're trained monkeys. We're like fucking trained monkeys. Once we see BBC, our guard comes down a little. Our guard it's just like a Pavlov fucking dog. Yo, BBC, okay, it's gotta have some fucking substance to it if it's BBC approved, right? No matter how horrible and evil and fucked up BBC is. Didn't they fucking employ Jimmy Savile for fucking decades, the child rapist? Wasn't he an announcer on one of their shows for fucking decades? Okay, so you don't have to be a fucking saint to do work for BBC or anywhere, and you don't have to fucking, be a superstar reporter. You don't even have to be honest. I mean, so once I saw that, he doesn't even work there anymore. So the headline's a little misleading. It says BBC reporter. Yes, he worked there in the past, but does he still work there? I don't believe he does. I do not believe he does. Maybe 20 years ago, he was doing fabulous work for them. Maybe. I don't know. So once I saw that they were pushing, it should say, the headline should read, Jimmy Dore normalizes Greg Palast on his show today, because that's what he's doing. He's normalizing. And hey, Greg, you got anything to sell? Yeah, I got this dusty old DVD I've been peddling for the last 2 years. Can you play a clip of that? It's a little Alex Jonesy, but I think your crowd will really eat it up. I can't believe it. I cannot believe Jimmy Dore is doing this, having Greg on like this. I don't have a smoking gun on Greg. I do not have direct evidence that he is compromised or paid by anybody, dark money, come sources. I suspect that's what's going on. I highly suspect that, and I have a lot of reasons to believe that based on what I just told you about him defending Jerry Quickly, a documented violence inciting former host at KPFK who I documented, I had removed from that fucking station, in my opinion. And I'm going to have some other people removed here too, to try my best to have some other people removed or at least exposed for the shills that they are. And now Jimmy Dore is doing it. I don't know, either wittingly or unwillingly, I'm not sure. Jimmy's a smart guy. Although he was a C student, he's got street smarts, and he's not dumb. Okay, he's not dumb. He knows what's up. He knows who's who. So I don't know whether he's witting or unwitting with Greg Palast, but it's looking real shady. Greg Palast. Just look at the guy. Would you buy a used car from that guy? So what he's saying may all be true. It may all be true. But look a little deeper past the headline, past the story that he's pushing, to the DVD he's selling. He's been pushing that thing for, the last 12 pledge drives on KPFK. Okay, I know. I'm a daily listener to KPFK for the last 17 and a half years. Okay, so I know KPFK. I know who's affiliated with it. Jimmy Dore, he has a show on there currently, Jimmy Dore Live Show, Fridays at 5 p.m. I made a show about that. I have a show about that. So I don't know. Both of them are affiliated with the station. Greg's not employed there, but he's a regular guest, co-host, supporter, sponsor, speaker for KPFK. And that in and of itself is weird. Okay, when you have reporters and news outlets getting into bed together like that, that's on its face is suspicious and worthy of questioning and concern. Because when journalists start getting in bed with the news outlets that they report to, that they use as their platform, that's a little fishy, okay? Because you're losing your journalistic integrity and autonomy if you're so affiliated with one station. And this is what I noticed with Jason Goodman, on my videos with Jason Goodman. They blur the line between guest and host and show. Jason used to have all these great guests on, Kevin Shipp, Bill Binney, all these good guys, and yes, they're like a broken clock. They're right twice a day, and it's gripping, riveting shit. But if you look past the headlines a little bit about who's making money, whose hands are in whose pockets, and where the money is going, that tells a different story. That's the real story right there. What's happening in the background, okay, behind the microphone. Behind these guys, who's getting paid, who's paying who. Greg Palast, yeah, he used to work for the BBC, but who's paying him now? Where does his regular check? And he mentions when he was on defending KPFK January 4th of this year, defending Jerry Quickly, the race-baiting loudmouth bully that they finally had to fire. And thanks, Alan Minsky, for putting him on the air for 2 years so we can enjoy his particular form of listener abuse, lying, straight up lying. The dude's talking about, continue the conversation on Twitter. There's nothing on Twitter. And go to SoundCloud. Nobody's over there. And it's a shame. It's a shame. And I'm so amazed it's so see-through, and I'm so amazed it was so easy to get him fired. It was so see-through. He had no comeback. He had nothing to say. Nothing to say. Jerry Quickly, no comeback. The dude had no comeback. So now I'm talking about Greg Palast and Jimmy. So I'm real disappointed again with Jimmy Dore, having on Greg Palast. And further, he fails to mention that they're both affiliated with the show. In journalism, there's a thing called full disclosure. Okay, so you disclose all your connections to your listener, so your listener is aware that who you work with, where you receive money from, who supports your show. So so Jimmy doesn't say that him and Greg are both mutually affiliated with KPFK. Jimmy has a show there on Fridays at 5, and Greg is a longtime speaker, guest, host, and regular guest and a personality at the station. And just on its face, a journalist being in bed with the news outlet so closely, just on the face of it, before any digging up any evidence, that's bizarre. That's bizarre. And that's the same thing I noticed in the internet world of internet news and trolls, news hooligans, with Jason Goodman. Please see my videos about Jason Goodman at my channel, Who's the Savage Now. I was totally sucked in to the Jason Goodman vortex, and then I finally realized, dude, this guy's just spewing bullshit with Harmon Wilfred. So I finally woke up. It was a hard landing. That was a kick in the teeth, man. Because I was donating money to him. I was emailing him about story ideas. I was totally down with Jason until he presented Harmon Wilfred, and that's pretty easy to see through. And now I'm noticing the similar characteristics at KPFK with Greg Palast. And now Jimmy Dore is supporting Greg Palast. So I'm starting to suspect Jimmy Dore is either in on it or too stupid to see what's going on there. Again, Jimmy Dore comes on to KPFK 90.7 FM during fund drives. They just play the replay. That was my show. Please see my video about Jimmy Dore at my channel, Jimmy Dore Replay, Pledge Drive Replay. They just play the replay from 6 pledge drives ago. He's referencing Donald Trump's empty podium. How long ago was that relevant? In the replay. And meanwhile, the show is called Jimmy Dore Live. Okay? So just before you even start listening to the show, there's all these suspicious, funny things that need to be answered for about the show and about the station and about the show. And my theory is that this KPFK has been overtaken by Jason Goodman types of people, and it's what they call it, a multi-channel network. Somebody funds this network of people, credentialed people, real people with journalism credentials and credentials in this and that and the other thing. And but they get this money and they just go around and give speeches and come on as guests and report, and then but meanwhile they're all asking for money. They're selling a DVD, they're selling a book, and some of the information's good and gripping and riveting and true, it may just be like a way to make money, but on the other side of it, manipulating, influencing public opinion is worth a lot of money. People will pay big, big money if you can manufacture consent of a population. Yeah? Right? If you can manufacture consent for this legislation or this person or this movement, or discredit this movement, if you can manipulate perception, and they send these people out, and some of them flash and burn. Some of them just burn, some of them, like Jason Goodman and Greg Palast, rise to the top of the game, and they're there. He's got his BBC, Rolling Stone, Guardian on his resume, and oh yeah. So the CIA or one of its infinite affiliate or cutout organizations couldn't set somebody up as a best-selling author. Look into that New York Times best-selling author thing, because that's getting tired as a buzzword. New York Times how hard is it to become a New York Times best-selling author, and how legitimate is that on your CV? New York Times best-selling author. I mean, they're a dime a dozen. New York Times best-selling author. And so I'm starting to suspect the buzzwords that they're using. Oh, he's a BBC. And once you hear they're buzzwords that once you hear them, your guard comes down a little bit. Your skepticism comes down a little bit. Your critical thinking comes down a little bit. You're not looking at these guys like, why does he always wear that hat? What's he got? What's he hiding under that hat? Does he have horns under there? Why doesn't he ever take off that hat? So that's my take. That's my immediate reaction on seeing Greg Palast normalized on the Jimmy Dore show. I don't have any smoking gun evidence. I just have a lot of reasons to suspect that he is not shooting straight when it comes to news. And again, he may be totally telling everything he's saying, maybe 100% true. 100% true. But look past the headlines, look past the juicy, riveting, gripping story that they're telling you to where he's coming from, who he's worked with in the past, and why they don't mention that they're both mutually affiliated with KPFK. That's a glaring red flag, Jimmy. You're not a journalist, but you're in the journalism game, buddy. So you got to play by the rules a little bit if you want to be believed. Full disclosure is one of the rules, Jimmy. And that's weird. It's just weird that you wouldn't bring that up. It's like, yeah, I saw you at the KPFK, I saw you at the station, or now you're at the station, or how do you like the station? Not one question or comment about the station. Meanwhile, they both go over there during Fund Drive, and they're pleading on the graves of their mother that isn't KPF great, you got to donate money, it's the last bastion of free speech, and isn't KPF great because they're having the Jimmy Dore show on, and blah, 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 you should donate money. Meanwhile, they don't mention it on his YouTube show. Even when he's got another KPFK personality on his show. That's a giveaway. That's a giveaway, Jimmy. That's a giveaway. Okay? That's a giveaway. Red flag. You're not even bringing it up in casual convo about, like, you're not even saying, like, hey, yeah, I was over there Friday for Pledge Drive, but did you nothing like that. That's a giveaway. Deeply suspicious. Okay? So there you have it. That's my initial reaction on the Jimmy Dore normalizing Greg Palast on his show. And yeah. Let's listen to a little bit of this perception management operation at the Jimmy Dore show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the live stream of the Jimmy Dore show. We have a special guest that just stopped in with us. Hang on, I want to read his introduction.
BBC alert.
I printed it out on special. Greg Palast is here. He's covered Venezuela for the BBC television and The Guardian, and you can get the film of his investigative reports, The Assassination of Hugo Chavez, as a free download.
Oh, there's something we can buy? Great. Tell us more about that.
Appreciate it.
I love it here.
Now, you've done a lot of great work, and recently you've done some great work on the cross-check.
Yes,
and
on vote theft by the GOP.
Recently, okay, there's the first problem. Recently on cross-check, he's been pimping that thing for at least a year. He's been pimping that DVD for it's at least a year old. I'd bet money on it. But Jimmy he's under the impression that Greg Palast's cross-check work with Chris Kobach in Kansas was recent. I don't know. I'm going to check that out.
How Trump stole the election. You know, my film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, was
how Trump stole the election. That was 2 fucking years ago. So his DVD could be 2 fucking years old.
All about how Trump shopped.
But Jimmy says it's fucking recent. So that's the first fucking lie.
They're going to shoplift 2020. So, but they're not satisfied with stealing the American.
And you got to mention the DVD up front. For some reason. Yeah, let's get that DVD up front and mention that in the intro. It's a sales pitch, man. It's a sales pitch. Greg Palast is a salesman. He more than a journalist these days. He may have been a great journalist back in the day, may have done some great work with the BBC, Rolling Stone, and Guardian, but now he's just a salesman and a pitch man for KPFK. And now on the Jimmy Dore show. Now Jimmy Dore is normalizing Greg Palast.
Elections. They have to steal the Venezuelan elections too while they're at it.
They have to steal the Venezuelan elections. Now, so
Jimmy said it was recent. Greg immediately goes back to the elections of 2016. That's not recent. So these guys are off track. These guys are completely. They're not on the same fucking page.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the live stream of the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest that just stopped in with us. Hang on, I want to read his introduction.
And they're both affiliated with KPFK 90.7 FM, which is right down the street from Jimmy's fucking house. Jimmy lives in Burbank, and the station is in Burbank. And Greg Palast is a frequent. He's a personality at KPFK. He does their fund drives. He goes to special events and speaks and introduces people like Chris Hedges and Tom Hartman. He's affiliated with the station, and again, that's weird for a reporter to be so closely linked with a news outlet, because it's an integrity thing. You can't be in bed with the people you're that's weird on its face. But so right off the bat, these guys are not on the same page. Jimmy says it's recent, but Greg goes straight to the 2016 election and his video. So I'm confused, Jimmy.
Hang on. I printed it out on special. Greg Palast is here. He's covered Venezuela for the BBC television.
He's also covered Venezuela for KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, Jimmy, but which is right. You could probably throw a rock from Jimmy's house and hit the station. Greg Palast goes there all the time, but they don't mention it at all. That's bizarre. How bizarre is that? Not even in casual convo. How bizarre.
And The Guardian, and you can get the film of his investigative reports, The Assassination of Hugo Chavez, as a
the film. I guess it's free
download.
Okay.
At gregpalast.com. It's Greg Palast. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Jimmy.
Thanks for being here again. I appreciate it.
I love it here.
Now, you've done a lot of great work, and recently you've done some great work on the cross-check.
Yes,
and
on vote theft by the GOP, how Trump stole the election, my film.
Crosscheck. Jimmy's asking him about crosscheck. Greg goes straight to the 2016 election. That wasn't recent. Did you guys notice that? I did.
The best democracy.
We don't notice things the first time. I don't. Anyway, movies, songs, people, things people say. I don't get it the first time. It takes me a few times to absorb it and analyze it and understand what's being said. And so that's why I guess reporters and people like the reporters, that's why they're reporters, because they dig in. They don't just listen to something once and think they understand it. They listen to it many times, like me, in order to understand it and find the gaps, the red flags, and there's a whole lot of fucking red flags popping up on this Jimmy Dore fucking show.
Money can buy was all about how Trump shoplifted the election, how they're going to shoplift 2020. So, but they're not satisfied with stealing the American elections. They have to steal the Venezuelan elections too while they're at it.
They have to steal the Venezuelan elections. Now, so you have some very interesting. So we've covered Venezuela extensively here at the show. So, for instance, well, they're not showing this kind of stuff, right? So this Abby Martin, how many Western news outlets showed the massive marches in Venezuela protesting the U.S.-backed coup today? I'm going to guess 0. So we also showed you.
So he goes on to talk about the Venezuelan story, and it may all be true. It may be 100% true and accurate, but it's called a lie of omission. Jimmy is consciously, I believe, not mentioning KPFK and the fact that they're both affiliated with the station in a big way. Greg Palast is, if you search KPFK, Greg Palast YouTube, if you search KPFK, Greg Palast will come up on YouTube. Greg Palast, a video on Greg Palast will come up in a video on KPFK, okay? That's how affiliated he is with the station. And Jimmy Dore, I don't think, is a regular listener, although he's got a show there now on Fridays at 5. And they wax poetic about, aren't we fiercely independent because we have Jimmy Dore's show on 1 hour a week, Friday at 5, as a comedy show in the comedy section. And the show opens with a hilarious phone call bit, but it's a bit. It's sketch comedy. And then, yeah, he does play some of the YouTube stuff, but I've heard it already by Friday. I've heard everything that they play on that Jimmy Dore Live. So before you even get to the show, there's just all these red flags. Like the show's called Jimmy Dore Live, but he's rarely live. Maybe he goes to the station once in a while, but again, it's just holding people accountable for their bullshit. Okay, and I'm starting to suspect that the reason Jimmy doesn't mention the radio station that they both are affiliated with and are employed by, I assume Jimmy gets some money or something from them. The reason he doesn't mention it is because he knows what a train wreck of a public radio station it is right now and currently. He knows that if real critical thinking people listened into this train wreck of a radio show where most of the primetime shows are just pushing the Trump Russiagate conspiracy, like Ian Masters and Tom Hartman. Tom Hartman's a little more subtle about it. He puts on a real good, happy, progressive face. But if you look real close and listen to the things he says, in between the headlines, you'll know where his allegiances lie. They all believe the official 9/11 story. They're Trump-Russia conspiracists, and the 17 intelligence agencies they're still pushing. They're still pushing that. They've got a DVD for sale on the fund drive that still talks about 16 intelligence agencies having high confidence in the Russian dossier. Okay? So check the facts, folks. Look at the facts. That's my point. Jimmy knows that if real people started to listen, right now the listenership is like 0.0000. It's the lowest of the Nielsen ratings in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is one of the biggest radio markets. It's like 1 or 2 in the country, right? KPFK is at the bottom of the Nielsen ratings, okay? And Greg brought this up when he was on KPFK last, January 4th with Jerry Quickly. He said, I was looking at the cumes, and your show is the most popular show in the afternoon. I can't understand why they would get rid of you. He played dumb. He lied, essentially. He's a liar, okay? So I caught him lying and pushing falsehoods. So that's why I don't trust him. He was lying on that January 4th show. I have a video about it. I'll leave it in the description, about how Greg Palast came on to support a race-baiting, fact-efficient, lying, violence-inciting former host at KPFK. I know I sound like a lunatic, but this stuff, and I don't know why this stuff gets me so angry, and I don't know why I really make these videos, but I can't not do it, okay? It gets me so angry. At the top of it, it seems like just vendetta or vengeance or whatever, but at the bottom of it, it's the fact that of a free press and trustworthy news sources and trustworthy information and people who lie, okay, for money, or mismanage information for money, or pimp a public radio station to prop up their own reputations and earning power. Okay, that's what KPFK is. It's a whore of a public radio station that everybody and their brother with a book to sell and a dusty DVD comes on and waxes poetic about how it's this last bastion of free speech in the country, and here, buy my book and donate to the station. And then when Jimmy's on his real show on YouTube, not a word to say. Not a word to say, Jimmy. Not a word to say about it, because he's embarrassed. He's embarrassed about the train wreck of a perception management operation KPFK has become, with the likes of senior producer Alan Minsky, who was the program director for the last 2 years or decade or something. Or he's been there for over a decade, because I've been listening for over a decade. And he's married to his wife, his man wife, Ian Masters. They're like an old married couple on there. When they get on for Fun Drive, they're like an old married couple. Ian is all cranky. Yeah, Trump fired all the top FBI guys because they were the experts in Russian organized crime. Did you know that? That's what Ian said recently. Yeah, did you know that? And Ian just says, yep. Yeah, Alan doesn't say anything. No pushback on that. So they're all. It's a sham of a tragedy, of a mockery of a public radio station. It's running on the last fumes of its fierce independence from the 50s, the 60s, when it was formed in 1959 by Lou Hill. And it's got a great radio. Pacific Radio Archives is awesome. They got a lot of historical recordings over there. Jimmy didn't know that on his replay, Fun Drive replay. He's like, wow, they got Muhammad Ali, man. I got to go listen to it right now. Wow. But if you're a regular listener to the show, you know that they have that stuff already. You're not surprised by the depth and the breadth of the Pacifica Radio Archives. You're not surprised at all. But Jimmy's like, wow, I can't believe it, on his last Pledge Drive replay. So it's just little things, folks, little things that I'm seeing here, and I'm really disappointed in Jimmy Dore. I thought Jimmy Dore was the real deal. I'm a Patreon member in my own small way of Jimmy Dore, but my days as a Patreon member of Jimmy Dore Show may be numbered. If this is the kind of programming he's going to push, if these are the people he's going to push, Greg Palast, and commit journalistic malfeasance and fraud by not fully disclosing his affiliation with the radio station down the street from his house that Greg Palast probably went to right after the interview. Okay, neither of them brought it up. Not a peep about the radio, the fiercely independent radio station that they work at. They use KPFK like a whore to push their books and their shows and their merchandise and their stories. But then he won't mention it on his YouTube show where real people listen, people that can think and fucking analyze and he knows if his audience went over to KPFK and started listening, if KPFK started getting listenership, it would be exposed, man. If little sunlight was put on this fucking radio station, these rats would flee like rats off a sinking ship, right? So right now, KPFK is just like at the lowest ebb of ratings, right? So nobody's listening. So they can do whatever they want over there. They can let Jerry Quickly do his particular form of radio malfeasance for 2 years. Nobody's going to complain until I came along and started saying, hey, man, this guy's fucked up. He shouldn't be on this station. And then that fired January 4th. Bam. 2 days before Christmas, they told him, hey, you know what? There's the door, buddy. See ya. See ya. I made videos about that too. So, I don't know. Jimmy Dore, what do you got to say, buddy? So then Jimmy plays a little clip of his movie that's like 2 years old, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. He's been pimping that. He's been peddling that for over a year on KPFK. But listen to the little details. He says he interviewed Hugo Chavez, but he doesn't say when. He just says years ago. Now he's a journalist, okay? And journalism is about facts and dates and precision and accuracy. But Greg just says, years ago, I interviewed Hugo Chavez. Well, when was it? It's sort of important. Dates are sort of important, Greg. Investigative journalist Greg Palast. But he just says years ago. Listen.
Hi. The answer is here in Corpus Christi, home of the Koch brothers' giant refinery. But the Kochs have a problem. They can't use Texas oil. It's not filthy enough. It's not dirty enough for their refinery. They have to use super heavy crude.
And look at the style of the movie. It's all sort of like overdone. It's melodramatic. It's real melodramatic. That's always a giveaway. It's just overproduced, overproduction.
Gunk, like you get from the tar sands. So for years...
Again, everything he's saying may be true. It may be true. But just look behind the headlines a little deeper about whose hands are in whose pockets, a larger picture, a larger narrative that he may be helping out or counter, what do they call it, controlled opposition. You know, he may be he may be funded in some weird way. Greg Palast may be funded by the Kochs. You know what I mean? They may want they may say, yeah, we need to give them something. We need to give those lefty progressives something to cling to, some idea that somebody's doing something somewhere and exposing all this malfeasance, capitalistic malfeasance. So they give us Greg. Who do they give us? They give us Greg Palast. Okay, people like Greg Palast and his movie. Here they say, we'll help you make your movie. You can sell it on stations like KPFK because nobody listens to them anyway, and so we can pretty much do whatever the fuck we want over there. And you can expose us a little bit, and but nothing's going to change. You're not going to change anything, and blah blah blah. That's just my theory. I don't know, but listen to when he doesn't tell us when he interviewed Hugo Chavez as a journalist. Wouldn't that be kind of important? Like the day you interviewed him. I mean, like, was it pre the revolution, post the revolution? I mean, when was it? He just says years ago. Red flag.
Years, the Kochs had to import their extra filthy crude from Caracas. And the price of that heavy oil was set by this man, the Frank Sinatra of Venezuela.
He's talking about Hugo Chavez. They're showing a video. Hugo Chavez is wearing Greg's hat.
Years ago, President Hugo Chavez told me,
Years ago. Could you be a little more vague on that date? Years ago. Was it 10, 15, 20, 30, 5, 2, 3? Years ago. He just says years ago. That's a red flag for a journalist.
Venezuela, with the world's biggest reserve of oil. Years ago, President Hugo Chavez told me,
Years ago. That's not very accurate, precise, or clear, Greg, when you spoke with him. And that's a problem for a journalist, for a best-selling New York Times best-selling author. I heard them say that once about him. I haven't heard it too often recently, but I heard that said about him, that he was also a best-selling New York Times best-selling author, and as well as working for the BBC, The Guardian, and Rolling Stone, which he was real subdued on Jimmy's show, but when he's on KPFK, it's every other sentence is BBC, Guardian. He references them constantly, which is another red flag. You don't beat people over the head with your credentials, your CV, dude. That's another red flag. He's so disappointing. I'm so disappointed in Jimmy Dore. I'm so disappointed in my local public radio station that I've been listening to for 17 and a half years, and believing I was getting like the real alternative, fiercely independent perspectives. I'm like, oh man, like nothing. Some people say nothing is what it seems. Nothing is what it seems. I've heard that said, and it keeps ringing true time and time again. Now again, I'm not sure how implicated Jimmy is in this whole perception management operation that calls itself a public radio station, KPFK, and I'm not sure how it works. It may just be a few rogue operators in there, like on the internet. All these guys spitting out all this information that that's what they want, to confuse us, to divide us, to keep us guessing what's true, to keep us running around scared, over-fluoridated, over-medicated, over-agitated, over-entertained, malnourished, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and spiritually. That's what they want. Somebody wants it that way. That's their plan. I think, I'm starting to believe, that somebody wants things this fucked up, like the Israel-Palestine situation that's been going on for all of my lifetime. Somebody wants it that way. I'm starting to think. I started to think a long time ago. This is just ridiculous. This is how somebody wants it, and that's what I'm starting to think about KPFK. Somebody wants that station all fucked up. So it can't fulfill its mission. It can't really be a fiercely independent news source. That's to keep it down, to keep the boot on the fucking neck of KPFK. Somebody's got their boot on the fucking neck of my fucking public radio station, and that's why I get so fucking pissed off. Okay? It's like it's just something that wells up in me. It's like when I got my fucking ticket for riding my bike on the fucking sidewalk from Santa Monica here in my fucking undisclosed seaside city. Yeah, it's funny on the surface. It's funny, huh? It's kind of funny. Well, not when you get the $234 fine citation in the mail 6 weeks later. That wasn't real funny. So I fought that all the way. I fought it all the fucking way. I spent hours preparing questions for this knuckle-dragging motorcycle fucking cop. Okay? I missed the first date, and he showed up. I missed the first. Get this. A guy who selectively, prejudicially, and who stopped me because I had long hair, baggy clothes, and was riding a beach cruiser. And I was driving by the homeless services center in Santa Monica next to the 10 freeway. I was next to the 10 fucking freeway on the sidewalk because it's the only way to get to Lincoln Boulevard from 7th Street when you're driving by the post office there. He turned around. I'm way off topic. The motorcycle cop, turned around to start following me on 7th Street, okay? Did a U-turn, started following me right behind me. I turned left onto the sidewalk from 7th to go to Lincoln. He fucking turned on his light, stops me, gives me a $234 ticket for riding my bike on the sidewalk. But that's what they do. They selectively and prejudicially use these codes to stop you, frisk you. I'm a white dude. I can't imagine how bad it is for black and brown people driving while black, It's that thing. And I got him to admit in court that he uses that fucking thing to profile people, although he said he didn't do it for me. Although he said, and I'm like, but wait a minute, isn't that illegal? And then there was just crickets in the courtroom because the judge was a substitute judge. I can't make this up. The judge was a substitute judge. And meanwhile, when we showed up at 8:30 a.m. in the morning and no windows, fluorescent lights, the lady comes up and starts dismissing all the cases because the officer didn't show up, like people that ran red lights, ran stop signs. I mean, serious fucking shit, right? And me, here I am, I rode my bike on the sidewalk to get to Lincoln Boulevard from 7th Street. This guy shows up, man. I'm like, oh, God. And there were like 20 people in the courtroom. I'm way off topic, but I got to get this off my chest. There's like 20 some people in the courtroom, and after the lady was done reading off the list of all the people that could go, were free to go because their officer didn't show up, there was just like 6 or 7 of us left. It was just like such a travesty. And the guy, the cop shows up and tries to defend himself, and I'm asking him questions, and I'm like, I'm asking him some tough ass questions, and the judge kept answering for him. The dude couldn't answer the questions, so the judge kept answering the questions for him, and the judge is like, yeah, well, we can't catch everybody that speeds on the freeway either, It's just, and I'm like, Judge, that's not a fair comparison because no cop would ignore a speeding motorist, but cops regularly ignore people riding bicycles on the sidewalks. I had pictures of cops sitting idly by while people drove past them on bikes on the sidewalk. He wouldn't look at them. He would not look at them. Okay. So I'm just using that as a comparison. Yeah, it's trivial on the surface, but at the very root of it, it's about the power of the state over over our personal freedom to stop us, to stop us and search us and seize us, right? Because once he stopped me for that, he had the right to ask me my ID, to run a background check on me, to see if I had any warrants, and that's where I thought he was going with it. I know that's where he was going with it. I got him to admit it, that he previously profiled people using that very municipal code. But meanwhile, anybody walking through Santa Monica would think that it's legal to ride the bike on the sidewalk because so many people do it and so many cops ignore it. But here I was in court, a $234 fine, and this guy. So that's just my luck. That's my karma. I dealt with it. I got all the money back, but I lost $100 because I missed the first court date. But it's stuff like that. See, at the root of it, it's vital. You know, the power of the state to stop us, to use their municipal codes as a pretext to stop us because they think we look suspicious and we're up, and maybe there's a warrant. And while he was talking to me, a patrol car came up, and I think that's their MO. And it was right across the street from the Homeless Services Center there, right next to the 10 freeway, a real nice part of town. And because there's just a whole caravan or army of homeless people that sit there, and there's probably a lot of people with warrants out among that population, right? So I got profiled, okay, out of that. And I had long hair, baggy clothes, driving a beach cruiser. He in his mind, I had a warrant or something. I had a history or something. So he turned around, started following me, waited till I committed that was another thing. He turned around and started following me on his motorcycle. He was waiting for me to make a crime. If a cop followed anybody around long enough, they could nab him for something. Jaywalking, littering, it's something. So it's the police state, man. It's the police state, you know. And I'm lucky. There's cops are shooting people and getting away with it. I got a fucking $200 ticket, and I'm crying about that. Okay, but at the root of it, it's a critical, it's a critical issue for a democracy, for a free press, for apparently, allegedly free country, free society, and these are core issues. That's why I think it gets me so upset about getting the police stopping you on bullshit charges, and people at my radio station doing perception management operations, and getting away with it. And that's what I'm trying to expose. That's why I do it. That's why I make these videos. I'm not doing it for subscribers. Since I started Jerry Quickly, I haven't got another half a dozen subscribers. Not even a half a dozen. Have not 6 new subscribers from last July, when I made my first video about Jerry. Jason Goodman, that's where the subscribers are. I was getting hundreds and hundreds of views on those videos and dozens of comments. That's where the action is for subscribers and comments. But that doesn't interest me. That's a freak show circus, man. That's a freak show sideshow of a circus, of a travesty, of a sham, of a mockery. And I know what's up over. I don't know what's all up over there, but I know Jason Goodman is not doing good stuff. I know he's involved in malfeasance, so I'm done with that. And I'd rather focus on something that's right over the hill from me here, people that I may run into on the street, and that nobody else is covering. Nobody else is covering KPFK. Nobody is watching this fucking train wreck of a perception management operation over there. Nobody's watching them except me. Me alone is doing this, okay? And I'm not doing it for subscribers. So, there you go. There you have it. The full fucking story. So let's hear what Jimmy says about that little clip that they just played.
Years ago, President Hugo Chavez told me,
Tú sabes que Venezuela tiene la reserva de petróleo.
Venezuela, with the world's biggest reserve of oil, would really stick it to U.S. customers like the Kochs. Do them.
Okay. First of all, eye-popping stuff, right? Didn't know that he had to...
Eye-popping stuff. Did you hear that sword? That little sword thing they did? It's over-dramatized. It's melodramatic. It's not journalism. It's borderline Alex Jones, right?
Import stuff from Venezuela. Didn't know he had to import the dirty crude from Venezuela. Did not know that this had to do with the Koch brothers. Did not know that. So that's great work.
Right. So what happens is people don't know this. See,
great work, Jimmy says. That's great work. Great work. 2 years ago. That video is 2 years old, man. 2 years old. And here he is still pushing it. What's he written recently? Where's Greg Pallas's most recent article? Where's his most recent video? Where's his most recent commentary? Where's his most recent journalistic output? I can't find it. He's just a spokesman. He's just a journalistic spokesperson for KPFK. I'm tired of it, man. I'm tired of it. And here's Jimmy normalizing him, saying, "Great work, Greg. Great work, Greg." But he won't say that they both work at KPFK. He won't say it, even though the radio station's right down the street from Jimmy's house in Burbank or North Hollywood. I'm sure it's real close. I'm sure it's a short drive or a moderately long walk. Do I sound angry? I hope not. So Jimmy is normalizing Greg on his show. He's normalizing a phony fraud news, I don't know what you call it, news perception management. That's a word I heard recently about Jason Goodman. Somebody commented on one of my videos about Jason. I made 3 or 4, and it's the most succinct comment. Like 9 months later, still getting comments on that. It's the most succinct comment on Jason that I've heard. He calls it a perception management operation, and some of them are benign, some of them are malevolent, malicious, but they're all just out there operating sort of on their own. Certain people fund this, certain people fund that, and then they interact. And it's like that's what's going on here with Greg. And now Jimmy's involved too. It's so disappointing, man. But here, let's listen. Should we listen to a little more? Let me see if I can find another clip. Here's another little weird thing I found about the interview between Greg Palast and Jimmy Dore. Again, I'm MZ. This is Who's the Savage Now, my YouTube channel. It's Wednesday, early March 2019. Very upset that Jimmy Dore is having on and normalizing Greg Palast, a character who I've identified as shady, fraudulent, misleading, and willing to lie to listeners on KPFK about what was happening with Jerry Quigley when he was getting fired. And I made a show about it. It's on my channel, Who's the Savage Now. It's called Jerry Quigley leaves KPFK due to a lack of resources. And it includes Greg Palast. Maybe I'll change the headline. But here's another little wrinkle in the interview where Greg doesn't know how to pronounce Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan. He says Azerbaijan, and Jimmy calls him out for it, and then he admits he doesn't know. Greg doesn't know if he's right or not, and that's kind of, I thought that was a little off-putting.
We said the United States supports 70% of the world's dictators. That's not why we overthrow someone or don't. Again, you're repeating the CIA pretext for an invasion. Say again.
Oh, by the way, unless I'm wrong, aren't the Saudi royals just dictators in bathrobes?
Yeah.
We call them royals. They're just dictators in bathrobes.
Just dictators.
And I was in other oil countries.
That's kind of a weird thing to say. That sounded like a weird thing to say for a journalist to say, to call Saudi leaders dictators in bathrobes. That doesn't sound very journalistic to me.
Other oil nations like Azerbaijan, where there's a
Azerbaijan.
Okay. You can mispronounce it any way you want to.
Isn't it pronounced Azerbaijan?
Well, it depends if you're Azeri.
That's how they say it?
When I was there, maybe they're all putting me on.
All right, you don't have to fucking do that.
It is absolutely a dictator.
Greg,
I'll leave dictatorship.
What is it? Azerbaijan?
Okay,
That's how you pronounce it?
Sure,
so right in your ear, Greg.
Okay, I'm wrong.
Right in your fucking ear. Okay.
Well, what do I know? I didn't speak Azeri,
okay.
So, but...
So he says he was wrong there. There was a little discrepancy. I'm looking for the quote. Where Jimmy mentions George Galloway, who's a UK former parliamentarian. I'm not sure. I've heard a couple of interviews with him. He says some provocative, progressive things, leftish things, perspectives. But he brings up George Galloway and Greg Palast. He has a history. I'm not sure what it is, but he has a real controversial history with George Galloway. Jimmy mentions George Galloway, but doesn't delve into it at all. At all. Wouldn't that be interesting to hear about what the feud is about between Greg Palast and George Galloway? That would be interesting to hear. Not a rehash of his 2-year-old DVD about Venezuela, which, okay, I think he makes some good points probably about Venezuela and the Koch brothers and the oil that's involved in it. Yes, those are probably valid points. I mean, they would have to be valid points. Otherwise, how could he be working for the BBC or whatever? But yeah, he mentions George Galloway, and I thought, well, I'm looking up George Galloway and Greg Palast. It was clear that they were feuding. They were arguing back and forth about something. They were taking shots at each other. But Jimmy just, curiously doesn't ask, doesn't delve. He mentions his name to sort of like to say to Greg, like, I know about George Galloway, but I'm not gonna put your thumbs to the screws. Put your thumbs in the screw to ask you any questions about it. Don't worry, buddy. So I found a little quote about Greg on his Wikipedia page. It looks like he's done some great work, investigative stuff on fraud and malfeasance and corporate malfeasance and stuff like that. So, he looks good on paper, but I found this quote by George Galloway, and Jimmy brought up George Galloway. He quoted George Galloway. That's a quote. He quotes George Galloway. And I don't know if he's throwing George Galloway in his face or what, but I found a quote from George Galloway. Oops, where'd it go? It looks really good on paper, but he just doesn't pass the smell test. He looks funny to me. After Palast wrote an article critical of Respect politician George Galloway responded by claiming Palast conflates meetings, truths, and half-truths, statements taken out of context to produce a toxic smear which would be actionable in the country he claims to work in, my country. So, and The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, that was that documentary. He made that documentary in 2016. Okay, or that was released in 2016. Another thing about Greg Palast that strikes me as odd, he doesn't mention one periodical, one other journalist, one other publication, one other network. He doesn't reference any supporting materials or people to support what he's saying. He doesn't mention anything, hardly ever. He doesn't, like journalists, they talk about other journalists, they use other journalists, other articles, other reports to support and bolster what they're saying. Greg doesn't do any of that. He doesn't feel the need to bolster or support what he's saying at all. And that's odd, because when people that come out and give news, a lot of people are going to say that's BS, man. But so you have to be ready to defend it, right? So you got to be ready to quote this article, that journalist, this report, this study, this. I mean, you got to. Greg doesn't have any of that at his fingertips. He barely knows how to pronounce Azerbaijan. So he looks clumsy. He looks bumbling. He looks, ignorant in a way. And he doesn't have the telltale signs of a journalist, somebody that's a working journalist, because you have all these things at your fingertips, facts, references, supporting materials. You have all this stuff ready to go. You don't bumble over the name of a country, and so it's just, that's what I see. I was working for the BBC. He overemphasizes his CV, his credentials. And that's a red flag for me, somebody that does that. You don't need to do that, dude. We see the BBC up in the headline. You don't need to beat us over the head with it.
Racist meme.
Yeah, the racist memes, and they're always, when I was there, I literally marched with the opposition. I was literally marching along, talking to people. Half of them speak English.
And they thought you were one of them because you're white.
Yeah, so they thought, hey, so talking about killing the monkey and all that stuff. And then you get to but what was never shown on US TV, and I finally had to break even the silence in Britain for BBC by showing the marches that were 5 times as large. 500,000 people in Caracas marching in.
Yeah, back in 2007, like over 10 years ago, you did that, okay? And that's his only reference point. His references are outdated. He doesn't have any current references or materials or studies or journalist friends or other. He doesn't make any reference to any current journalism activities going on. None. He's just like this lone wolf, this isolated journalist in an island unto himself, sort of like Ian Masters at KPFK. I'm noticing all these similarities between these operators, these perception management operators that I call them now. Here's some more BBC plugs, and Jimmy helps him out a little bit, gives him an assist on the reaffirmation. Yeah, you worked at the BBC, right? Yeah, I worked at the BBC. Yeah, okay. Yeah. How many times do they have to say this? How many times do they, and it was 2002.
But, I saw this back in 2002, just before the coup. Actually, a woman came to me in London, Dulcie Rodriguez, who said, President Chavez had sent me to talk to you. You got to save him from being killed in a coup on the Ides of March 15. And I said, who's Hugo Chavez? I didn't know. I figured he's another South American whatever. Then I studied up and I found out this guy was...
He's a journalist. Didn't know who Hugo Chavez was. The president of Venezuela? He didn't know who he was? What kind of a journalist doesn't know who the president of Venezuela is? Especially if you're going to go down there and do research and study and reports for the BBC. You're a reporter for Rolling Stone, Guardian, BBC, but you don't know who Hugo Chavez is? What?
Feeding the people, he was building houses. He was amazing. And but March 15th, he wasn't kidnapped, so all the people at BBC made fun of me, or he wasn't overthrown.
What network was that, Greg? Wait, Jimmy will remind us.
A week later, they kidnapped Chavez. Now, here's the thing.
So you were working for the BBC.
Yeah.
You're debunking.
What was that? BBC? BBC?
The narrative and in real time.
And I go down there. Okay, I'm down there. And one of the things I did do, by the way, is I found out that the New York Times ran a story by a reporter named Juan Ferrero, who's still covering for them,
Yes.
And he said Chavez had resigned. This is the headline: Chavez resigns, knowing he was unpopular.
Hey, he did mention a journalist in another publication. Wow. Okay, wow. That's interesting. Okay, I think that's about it. We're about an hour here, so that's a good time to stop. Just truly disappointed in Jimmy Dore for bringing on Greg Palast, somebody who I've identified as a fake journalist. Somebody that strikes me as a fake journalist. Somebody that strikes me as not doing some real work, but then it's not clear like what his role is at my local radio station. That's where I heard of Greg Palast, first of all, from my local radio station, KPFK, and I do a KPFK Watch on my channel, Who's the Savage Now, and that's what this is, sort of. That's how I got into Jimmy. Well, no, that's why I started reporting on Jimmy, because he has a show on KPFK. I listen to his YouTube channel. His radio show is just sort of replays from the YouTube channel, and then some pre-recorded comedy stuff. I'm not sure where the live part comes in. And I made a video about that. You can. I'll leave it in the description thing. You can, for your leisure viewing. And this is all small time news, but it's important to me, and it's important to a few other people, I think, too. So you don't have to get a lot of views. You just have to get the right views. You know what I'm saying? You just have to find that 1 or 2 or 3 people that can actually get stuff done or have an influence on things. If you're right, if you make a good case against for something, right? So that's the power of YouTube, power of the internet, power of citizen journalism. I'm inspired by Jimmy. Jimmy inspires me to do this stuff, to call people out. And he admitted even he can be criticized, and that's what I'm doing. I'm criticizing Jimmy Dore. And in the journalism game, you're in the arena, you're on the field, dude. You're playing the game. You got to play by some of the rules. Full disclosure is one of the rules, Jimmy. You didn't do it. Why? I want to know. I want to know why. Okay. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time. Peace out.